Hey guys, how many times have you felt like you're living life burning not just one, but both ends of the candle, thinking, I thought Christian living was supposed to be? Look, life's hard, especially as a Christian. You can't just invite God into your life and think every problem you've ever had is just gonna go away. So what do we do? How are we supposed to act? What's the correct response? Well, those are some of the things we talk about here at the Hope Seat. Taking real life issues, real life scenarios, and talking them out. Take this ride with us, and let's figure it out together. What is going on, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages? The Hope Seat is live. So pull up a chair, put that favorite cushion on it, and let's talk about what's going on. You know, I just have to start off with this, guys. I am just blown away by the response that we received on our trailer post just a couple of weeks ago. The response was absolutely phenomenal. Within 24 hours, I got an email saying that the actual podcast had been played over 50 times. 50 times in less than 24 hours. Now, I'm no veteran to the podcast game, but I mean, for 50 different people to listen to this podcast in a matter of 24 hours, I think that's pretty good for someone who's never done this before, I mean, as in the podcast field. So I'm happy with it. I'm really hoping that you guys will just continue to join us on this trip here on the Hope Seat. My name is Rafael Nieves, and I have to tell you, if you guys are listening to this through the Buzzsprout application on the Buzzsprout website, whichever one, keep in mind we are not only on Buzzsprout, but they are kind enough to make sure that they get us on Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn. We will eventually be available on iTunes under podcasts there, and hopefully getting picked up by Google Podcasts in the near future. Just keep that in mind if you use any of those other applications. Love to have you here on Buzzsprout, but if Spotify is easier for you, we're there. If Stitcher's easier for you, then we're there too. And we just want to make sure that you are able to pull up that seat whenever it is that you need to here at the Hope Seat. So, the reaction has been awesome. The reaction has been very well received, and people, when they found out that the podcast was finally live and that the first episode was going to be coming out right now, depending on if you're listening to it, the day that we actually published it here, they wanted to know different things. Exactly what is it that we're going to be talking about, and you know, one of the things that constantly kept coming up is, what are you going to talk about first? So I was asking different questions to different people about what it is that they would want to hear about first. And naturally, right, if you're going to do something, we've got to do it with excellence. And everyone chose a pretty heavy topic to talk about first. And I really do believe it's a timely topic, given the fact of different things going on in my own life and the different things that I see going on within our church, not just with people who are currently there, but also people who used to be a part of our church. You know, they've gone on, they've moved to different places, different states, some even different countries, if you will. And, you know, this is something that people deal with more often than they probably would like to admit. And that situation is what I call fading faith, right? Fading faith. Now, I'm a pastor, and I can tell you there are days that are harder than others, right? So, what are some things that can lead to fading faith? Well, I've asked people, what do you think? Well, what are some situations, what are some circumstances that you have gone through as a believer that has taken you a step back where you're like, oh, why is this happening to me? Why am I the one that's going through what I'm going through? Why is it that no matter what it is, it seems that I'm doing, and no matter how much I pray, no matter how much I'm reading my Bible, for some reason, difficulty finds me? Death of a loved one, loss of a job, health issues. All of these things are things that eventually happen to every believer, right? It's not just happening to people who don't believe, right? And this is something that I try to talk about all the time with our teenagers here at the church. Just because you're a Christian doesn't mean that you're not going to have any problems. I typically tell them, if you're doing Christianity right, you're probably going to have more problems than anyone else, right? Because giving your life over to Christ, it takes a lot of sacrifice. It does. I lost a lot of friends when I became a Christian, believe it or not. And eventually, I did end up reconnecting with them. They respected my decision in my life. But it hasn't made life any easier, you know? And I'll just share a story with you real quick. So for those of you who don't know, I was in the military for 11 and a half years. Now, I was not a perfect soldier. I never had a blemish on the record in regards to the disciplinary or anything like that. But I certainly could have tried harder. You could talk to any of my NCOs, man. When a physical fitness test would come around, I'd be like, oh, man, I really don't feel like doing this today. But you know what? Nevertheless, it needed to be done, and I was definitely one of those guys who I was trying to do it just like I was trying to make it. Not so much with the push-ups or the sit-ups, but boy, I could not run to save my life, right? Couldn't run to save my life. I didn't even run. I waddled really fast. It's been like that since I was a kid. What can I do? What can I say? But, you know, halfway into my military career is when I actually got saved. And when I got saved, it was a dramatic change in my life. And I have to tell you, it wasn't well received initially by everyone because I was that party guy. I was the guy who brought everyone to the room, and I, filled the bathtub up with ice, and there were bottles of alcohol in there and bottles of alcohol in the sink, and anywhere that can hold ice, there was probably alcohol. And so obviously from one day to the next, I ended up giving it all over to God, and God really delivered me from all those things. And so I literally went from one drill weekend to, being the life of the party to the next drill weekend saying, hey, guys, listen, I'm not about that anymore. It wasn't like they were mean to me or anything like that. I was blessed to have an awesome squad with the military. Never really had anyone that was out to stab me in the back or anything like that. Not everyone liked me, but, there was a mutual respect that was there. So as I continued on in my military career, obviously there were a lot of changes that took place. I was how do you say it? I was one of those born-again Christians that I was a fire that was just blazing. Everywhere I went, I was talking about Jesus. Everywhere that I went, I was trying to represent Jesus. And to an extent, sometimes it's actually kind of prideful, to be honest. Look what God did in me, and he could do it in you too, so you don't have any excuse kind of a deal, And it wasn't until I had gotten married. My wife was very good at reeling me back in when I needed to get reeled back in. But she's still good at it now, till to this day. But fast forward a couple of years now. It's been years since I've been saved. And now I'm here in pastoral ministry and everything like that. But at the very end of my military career, I was in Afghanistan. I was having this conversation with my wife. I was saying how I'm starting to take things more seriously, that I'm getting a lot more physically fit. And I think that I'm going to make the military my career. I wanted to go into the warrant officer candidacy course. I wanted to really expand my experience in the communications division. And out of nowhere, one night on guard duty, the sergeant of the guard is coming in, and as he's coming in, I'm walking down. He asks me a question. I walk back up. I'm talking to my battle buddy up there. As I'm coming back down, one side of the guard tower is unhinged. And because it became unhinged, I end up taking a 7-foot drop down to the next platform and essentially, for lack of a better term, separate my foot and my ankle from the rest of my leg. So eventually I get medevaced out to Germany, and when I'm in Germany, I have a doctor looking at me. He pretty much tells me my career is over, right? And I was like, that can't be possible. I just made the decision to take this more seriously and to really advance my career. And needless to say, over the next year or so, I ended up probably going through the biggest struggle in my life. See, it even gets emotional now when I'm thinking about it. Because over the next year, I was told I'll never be able to walk again. I was told that essentially I'd be on pain medication the rest of my life. I was told that because of that, I probably wouldn't be able to further my education if I wanted to further my education. Because of that, there were a lot of side effects and everything like that. There was a possibility I wouldn't be able to father a family. Now, I come from a big family, okay? I come from a family where my grandmother had 12 kids. And not only did she have 12 kids, but she has over 100 grandchildren. She is now up to great-grandchildren in some generations. And it is just absolutely heart-wrenching when you get that kind of news. And I think I was like 27 when it happened. 27. And you would think that that would be enough, right? Like I said, I'm a believer, and I'm trying to do everything I can, God. And no. Other things end up happening to me down the line in my life. Family members come down with serious medical conditions. I end up losing family members at the same time. And this entire time, I continued to seek reason because I couldn't figure it out. I was praying, I was reading, I was tithing, I was doing everything I was supposed to do, but for some reason, it just seemed like nothing was working for my favor. And let me tell you guys, I went through a very dark time in my life as a believer, right? Slowly but surely, my faith was being chipped away, and I didn't realize it. I had started putting my faith into myself, essentially. I was like, God, don't worry. You've gotten me this far. I've got it from here. And that's a dangerous place to be, right? Very dangerous place to be. And as I continued in my life, I really had to buckle down. And I remember breaking down in bed next to my wife. I think we were having an argument of some sort, and I just laid it all out. And I told her, I said, listen, you don't understand. My entire life was taken from me in one day. One day, my entire life had changed from aspiring career in the military to nothing, to relying on people. And, in the people that I thought I was going to be able to rely on besides my wife, being taken away from me. I had to dig deep, guys. I ended up having to really dig deep and start going into men's Bible studies every Monday night, man. I didn't miss a single one, you know? Obviously, if I wasn't in the state, I couldn't make it, or if I had work. But if it was in my control, I did not miss a Monday night. Okay? I continued to do the work that God had called me to do in youth ministry. I had continued to make sure that I was being the head to my household that I needed to be. And guys, let me tell you, I eventually got that breakthrough that I needed, because I got to a point where I was like, you know what? Enough is enough. Yeah, I'm going to go through bad things. I'm going to go through bad things. But the key was that I realized I wasn't going to have to go through them alone. And that's the difference between living a life with and living with a life without Christ. It's really that simple. You know, it doesn't have to be complex. And sometimes I get asked the question, you know, being the youth pastor, is that normal for a Christian to be going through that? Is it normal for a Christian to feel like, God, I'm starting to feel like I don't know who you are. I'm starting to feel like I don't even know who I am. And I say yes. It's normal, guys. It is normal to have bad days. It's normal to feel these things because we're human. We are human. But what we need to remember is that when we start feeling those things, we need to turn to God. We need to turn to God to really reel us back in. God, my parents, they're going through a divorce. Go to God. You know? Oh, man, I just got diagnosed with this sickness. Go to God. You know, I'm not saying, you know, just go to God and then forget the doctors or don't talk to anybody else about your problems. No, I'm not saying that. But so often we find ourselves in situations where it's like, man, I don't know how I got here, but I know that I can't get out on my own. So, yeah, it's normal to feel that way, but when we come back, we're going to take a real quick break here. When we come back, we're going to talk about how do we overcome that feeling. How do we overcome that feeling of heaviness, overcome that feeling of even depression, or overcome that feeling of, I feel like my faith is fading? We're going to talk about that when we come back, so stay tuned. We'll talk real soon. Hey guys, the Hope Seat wants to hear from you. We want to know what kind of things you are looking for hope in. What things are you going through in life? What would you like to talk about? Email us today at thehopeseat@gmail.com or reach out to us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter at The Hope Seat, and we'll try to respond as soon as possible. We're looking forward to hearing from you soon. Take care. Now, back to the show. All right, guys, welcome back. We are ready to get right back into it here. And we're talking about fading faith. We're talking about those moments in our Christian walk, those moments in our life where we are like, God, I don't know where I am, but what I do know is that I'm not where you want me to be. I'm not where I want to be. And I have no idea how I got here. I have no idea how to get out of here. And I just know that I need you to be my GPS right now. Okay? I made a wrong turn somewhere, and I need my godly positioning system to bring me back and reroute my life. And this is something that, in order for us to get past it, we need to admit it. We need to admit that there's something going on in our life that we don't have any control over, that we took steps that we shouldn't have taken, and we've made decisions that we shouldn't have made. Once we come to that conclusion, once we get to that realization, we can move forward. Okay, we can move forward. And once we come to that realization, it doesn't just stop there, right? Because there's a lot of people who they'll admit that they have a problem. They admit that they're in a bad place, but then they don't do anything to get out of it, right? And I've run into those people, they're going through something. I'm just waiting on God to get me out. I'm just waiting on God to provide me an escape. I'm just waiting on God to do this, or I'm just waiting on God to do that. But I have a possible revelation for you. Yes, we are to wait on God, but God doesn't want us to just sit there. We need to be actively pursuing the solution that God has given us to get out of the situation that we are in, okay? And we know this because it's all through the scriptures, right? When the Israelites were in Egypt, they were waiting on God, but they were doing what it is that they were supposed to do while they were there. And then you had Moses that came in, and he answered the call that God had placed on him, reluctantly at first, right? And eventually he did what God called him to do, and that resulted in the Israelites having to do something, get up and go. Leave Egypt. God has done the work. Now you have to follow through, right? So what are a couple of things that we can follow through on to get out of that situation, to get out of that circumstance? One of the things that you can do is the go-to thing, right? Read the Word. Read the Bible. I know sometimes that life gets crazy, okay? Life gets absolutely hectic. I have a full-time job. I'm a full-time youth pastor. I have one child who's 4 years old, and then I have another one that's currently baking in the oven, all right? I have my wife. I have a home. I have, a business that I run. I have a lot of things that I'm doing, and our God in heaven knows that I do not have time to start a podcast. But when God gives you something, when God gives you a mission, God gives you a purpose, and God says do it, and you don't do it, you don't have that peace, right? You don't have that peace. And that's where I was when it came to this podcast. And, there are times where I'm just like, I go a whole week and I'm realizing, you know what? I've gone this whole week preparing lessons for the youth ministry, preparing for Sunday service, preparing for whatever it is that God has me preparing for, a podcast now. I cannot forsake the personal time that I need to have with God. Now, I'm not saying that I have to be in a situation where I have to dim the lights to a certain brightness level, or, I don't have to have a certain scent in the air. I don't need candles lit, and I don't need, the holiest of holy music playing in the background to spend time with God, right? The same way that I spend time with my wife. All she desires is for me to show up. All she desires is for me to be faithful to her. All that she desires is for me to continue developing the relationship that we have with one another. How does that happen? We do it through talking, through speaking with one another, spending time with one another. It doesn't have to be this elaborate situation for you to develop a relationship with God. And I think that's this ongoing mentality in our faith, where people feel like there needs to be a certain scenario in order for you to feel like you are one with God. Second revelation: if your faith is based on your feeling, your faith will be changing every day. Want to test that theory? On a day where you feel like you have all the energy on the planet, go get a greasy burger, a large soda, and eat it. When it's all said and done, and that burger starts to digest nice and heavy in your gut, and the sugar in that soda starts to hit you hard, and then you hit that plateau and then the crash, tell me how you feel when you're done. Feelings change all the time with something even as simple as what you just ate for lunch. So our faith can't be rooted in the way that we feel. Our faith needs to be rooted in the truth that God gives us in His Word. And the only way we can know the truth that's in His Word is if we read it. And in doing so, we spend time with God. And the relationship continues to be built. And as a relationship continues to be built, doesn't mean that you're not going to have issues. It doesn't mean that you're not going to run into problems. It doesn't mean that things are just going to get better overnight. Okay? What it means is that you're, again, not going through this alone. Right? What else can we do to overcome that fading faith? Spend time with other believers. I have no idea how many times I've had the conversation with people who tell me I can worship God at home. Yeah, you're absolutely right. You can worship God right in your house. You can worship God from your bed. You can. Okay? But here's the thing. We're in a technologically advanced society today. If you're listening to this, you are a part of that technologically advanced society. And with a technologically advanced society, as advanced as everything is, there is still the need to plug things in order for it to operate at its maximum potential. A cell phone. It has to be charged every day or every other day, depending on how often it is that you're using it, okay? Regardless, it only has a certain amount of time that it can function before it needs to reconnect to something to recharge it. You know, I'm the youth pastor, so I'm used to the kids. I'll tell them that they need to plug in their cell phones to get them charged. They're like, well, I have wireless charging, Pastor. That's okay. You still need to create some kind of connection to something to charge that device because it can't charge itself. It doesn't have the ability to charge itself. Right? Even if you have solar panels, you still need an outside source to charge you up. And that is where the church comes into play. When we gather with one another as believers, we are able to bounce the situation, bounce the things that we have going on in our life off of one another. We're able to say, hey, John, listen, I'm going through some stuff, man. This is what I'm going through. And I've really been praying about it. I've really been bringing it to God. And it seems like I'm still going through this problem. John then has an opportunity to say, well, brother, listen, what's your day look like? What are you doing throughout the day? How are you spending time with God? You know, how's that going? And you're able to work through it with one another because there's an exchange of idea. There's two spirits connecting with one another, able to help minister to one another. That's why God tells us, do not forsake the gathering of the saints, right? Because when we gather with one another, when we gather together as brothers and sisters in Christ, someone's going to be able to remind you, hey, listen, you know what the word says? It says that by this we shall know that we are the truth and reassure our heart before him. For whenever our heart condemns us, God is greater than our heart and he knows everything. God knows everything and he is greater than our heart. He's greater than what we are feeling because he has given us a truth to reassure that heart. And sometimes, guys, listen, I have bad days. I get depressed days as well. And sometimes I just got to reach out to someone and let them know, listen, I'm going through some stuff and I need you. I need you in my life to tell me or remind me who God is. Sometimes I need someone to remind me what God has done. Someone to remind me, hey, you know what, Raphael? Remember when they said you couldn't walk anymore? Remember when they said you wouldn't be able to do this? But God. But God. And that's why we have to make sure that the circle of friends that we have are a circle of friends that actually edify us. People who actually want the best for us. Right? Those who want to make sure that we're moving forward, and if we're falling, that we're falling forward, not falling backwards. And it's very easy when we're together with other believers to realize what 1 John 2:19 says. It says that they went out from us, but they were not of us. For if they had been of us, they would have continued with us. But they went out that it might become plain that they all are not of us. See, I have friends that work at banks, and the way that they're able to tell the difference between a counterfeit bill and a real one is they handle only one kind. So this way, when the actual fake bill comes, they're able to tell what it feels like right away. This isn't right. This doesn't look right. This doesn't feel right. In some cases, this doesn't even smell right. And that's the way our life is. When we're with other believers, we know what it looks like to be a Christian in today's society. Now, if I'm out there and I come across someone and they're condemning people, they're condemning the world, they're going around and all it is that they have to say is that person's going to hell, that person's going to hell, that person's going to hell, that person's going to hell. I'm sorry. But no one will ever know the love of God if all you ever talk to them about is his wrath. You know what? God tells us that he had not come. Jesus did not come to condemn this world. It's already condemned. How about we tell them something that they don't know? That God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish but have eternal life. Everyone knows John 3:16, but 17 goes further. It says, God did not send the Son into the world to judge the world, but that the world might be saved through him. So guys, today, when we're talking about fading faith, we have to remember God sent Jesus so that we wouldn't have to suffer anymore. That we wouldn't have to go through this life knowing that, you know what, I'm messed up and I don't know what's going to happen. No, God sent his Son that we would have eternal life. So let's go into this world. Let's go into this world and let them know, look, you may have gone through some trials, you may have gone through some tribulations. And man, even if you already know who Jesus is, you need to remember the world is saved through him. All we have to do is believe. All we have to do is trust that what he said is true. All we have to do is have hope. Thanks for joining us today, guys. It's been an absolute pleasure spending this time with you. Tune in on the next episode of The Hope Seat, where we're going to start talking about something called the label makers. Who are the label makers? Well, tune in next time and find out. Love you guys. God bless you. Thank you so much for listening today to The Hope Seat. We pray that you are blessed and today's message brought just a little more hope into your life. Don't forget to subscribe to be notified every time a new episode is posted by clicking the subscribe button today. If you'd like to contact us here on The Hope Seat, feel free to email us at thehopeseat@gmail.com. If you would would like to become a supporter of the show, simply click Support the Show on our Buzzsprout page or visit us at ocgf.org and choose Hope Seat after clicking the Giving Made Easy banner on the right. Thanks again, and I can't wait to have a seat with you next time.